Admit it, everyone has bad or fundamentally flawed bonsai, and everyone has problems sometimes admitting it and also looking at the realistic solution. This video was inspired by Jelle and the recent attempt to answer your questions, and first of all, it caused lots of interesting comments, some positive, some negative. But you know what? Jelle did go around my garden and he picked out a number of trees that had flaws that, well, quietly I didn't want to admit to. And in today's video, I'm going to take you around. I'm going to look at 3 trees that have got 3 big bonsai flaws, and then I'm going to offer you 3 solutions to them. All of them are easy to apply, and all of them you can certainly apply perhaps to 1 or 2 of your own bonsai that maybe you'll take a second look at and go, yeah, perhaps I should do something about that. Hi, it's Xavier. Welcome to my bonsai retreat, and hopefully welcome to a video that's going to sort of ring home and ring true to a number of you. And we're going to jump straight into it because Jelle was developmentally critical of a number of my trees. In particular, if you follow my finger, look, by the way, at the flowers on that lovely pyracantha in a cascade. I'll give you a hint now. That cascade is more realistic than, unfortunately, this one here, which I love. He made me look at it. And in fact, let's just remind ourselves of the comments that he made to Jason while he was talking about a juniper and how a cascade realistically forms in nature.
Typically, a cascade reflects a tree that stands on, for instance, a rocky terrain where every once in a while rocks tumble down, branches break, and the only part of the tree that survives are the ones that hang down and everything rolls over and then it can roll up, break down, so you have this undulating shape going down and down.
Now, firstly, is this a bad bonsai? No, of course not. You know that I did a brilliant video on it. That was it, and that's where I was exploring how to develop and create cascades, and I was using one of many of hundreds of the Chinese elm cuttings I've got, and I wired it down. I showed you the basic principles of cascade. But you know what? I did get one thing very, very wrong, as you heard, how a cascade forms. Now, again, does this make this bad? Am I insulting anyone who's got something like this and likes it and decides that they actually don't need to do anything? And I think it's probably another good point. There were 1 or 2 comments, and it's always difficult when you do a critical assessment of people's facts. You know, I wish my fingers would stop doing that, like little bunny rabbits, aren't they? And I know 1 or 2 said, look, you know, I feel like I'm being treated like I'm stupid or something because I didn't do something or I didn't consider something. Well, as Jelle's been around my garden, he's pointed out a number of the things I didn't do. I don't feel stupid. I don't feel like I've made a big boo-boo. It's just part of the learning process. We can choose to look at it and assess what the person is saying and whether it affects us, or we can say, do you know what? I love this exactly as it is, and I'm not going to do anything to change it. Well, actually, in this instance, I am. And do you know why? Peter Chan from Heron's Bonsai saw this when it looked completely different. And at the time, I was really happy with it. This is a larch that was one of my original batch of 2-year saplings from 2000. And for the majority of its life, both those branches there were pointed upways in what I thought was a really attractive Y. I have to ask myself the question, why did I think of it? And actually, Jelle and I discussed that subject a couple of years ago in something, I think we called it bonsai blindness or something like that, where you end up looking at your tree so long, you lose sight of some of the issues that other people almost see straight away. Again, I'll stress, just because other people see something's an issue, doesn't mean you have to. Your garden, your trees, your happiness. So don't ever let anyone make you feel bad or belittled because your tree doesn't fit their image of what it should be. But equally, nothing wrong than using these and trying to decide whether perhaps take a little bit of humble pie and go, I can learn something. Anyway, enough of that. So that's the reason why I'm now going to do something different about that cascade. So, as I said, in my garden, I've certainly got stuff that I'm quite happy to continue to let go, and I've got different solutions for them. But in this instance, bearing in mind I said this is how you grow a cascade, I think it's important that I correct it. Now, this is supposed to be battered down and continually battered down, and the argument would be, and certainly Jelle pointed out, is that this trunk here is far too straight for far too high. And you've got to look at it and go, how could that have happened in nature? If it's on the cliff edge of rock, then probably that cascade would have started a lot lower, somewhere down here. And I accept that. There is actually a solution. What if the tree was actually growing behind a great big rock, or something like this? So the trunk initially got to grow up the side, and then as soon as it got into the open, the wind bashed it down and pulled it down. Solution one, that could be realistic. I just put some obstacle in front of that first half to explain how it got to be straight. So we don't actually have to go to the solution which I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is, having a look at that trunk, I mean, it's beautiful bark, but actually if you look at the trunk, it's got quite a large scar going all the way up to about there. If I considered removing that branch and then perhaps put an air layer, something like, I don't know, there, so you've got just probably a little high, a little minimal, and then bring it right down and then continue to build that as an apex. I'm going to say again, you wouldn't need to do that. I'll tell you what, if I put a rock in front of that, this thing would look absolutely gorgeous, brilliant. Loads of Chinese elms, I can afford to do it. This is why I grow so many Chinese elm cuttings, so I get to experiment. I want to see if I can achieve something with this. So we're going to do an air layer. And this is not an air layer video. As I said earlier, if you look at my propagation playlist, it'll be in the description. Then you can see doing an air layer up close and real. I'll literally whiz you through some of the things I've got and what I need. First of all, what we need to do is cut away that. And I imagine that will cause that to bounce up so that we can get at that trunk. Okay. Can probably use wire from there to there as a means of keeping that down. But for now, need to get that air layer in place. So really though, if I'm going to put an air layer, do I need this branch here? And I think the answer is no. Equally, put that in some rooting hormone, whack it in some soil. That would make cutting very easily. And to do an air layer, you need a sharp knife. I use sphagnum moss, which is damp, not soaking. You can either use a rooting gel or indeed a rooting powder. Normally, if it has IBA in it, that really helps. You can have a look at notionbonsai.com. It's got loads and loads of products, and certainly I use them. Also need plastic, which you wrap around your air layer, you wrap around your sphagnum moss and tie it into a tight ball. And then I normally finish that off with some aluminium foil, which reflects sunlight and also I find stops algae building up on the plastic. People equally use little air layer pots. I've seen them, two halves come together and you put it in there, and various different methods in and around that. Bottom line is, I need to cut a centimetre or so ring bark away so that I can then put the gel at the top and encourage roots to come down. As I've said, I've got loads of really good videos on that. In fact, that aeroplane that's coming over the top is just coming down now because he heard I was air laying this cascade. Honestly, mate, just watch my playlist. They're really good, especially the one about taking two air layers off a really beautiful Katsura. Jelle helped me with that one as well. Good video. Right, there it is. Let's say once you've created your two cuts, you should hopefully be able to just take it off like that. And there you've got your nice clean cut. That's very, very clean at the top. This is the top part. This is where you're going to get your roots from. This is the part that needs to be very clean. Then it's a bit hard, enough for gap, and I normally use the diameter of the tree as a guide, which is clear and nicely taken away. So there's no chance of bridging there. Now I'm just going to use my IBA, my rooting hormone. Now someone did quite rightly mention that it does use an active ingredients that can, in some cases, reported to be cancerous. So either use gloves or indeed some way to ensure that you don't get turned into some new species of human bonsai hybrid or whatever. Joking aside, definitely wear some nice gloves. So I'm giving this a good coating of this, and the liquid gel apparently works really, really well. And then all I'm going to do is pack that in sphagnum moss, and we'll come back to you when it's all wrapped up. And there we go, trimmed up as well, looking pretty decent. And am I nervous about it? Look, if you do an air layer, anything propagation wise, there's always a chance of failure, and you've got to be willing to accept that when you make your choices. I'm going to say this again, especially for Jason, because this advice I think actually referred to his juniper and that it had quite a long length. You have to be certain, you have to be sure. Ultimately, it's your garden, it's your trees, and it's your happiness. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to see how that works out, and I will update you on the results of this one, most definitely. Hopefully, it'll work out fine. So let's go to the second tree, and the second probably biggest failing that I've made in the past. Actually, thinking about it, while we're on the Chinese elm, it did occur to me that there was one question. It came from, I think, Malsrfun, and it was related to what's the biggest size of cuttings you can take on an elm. Jelle answered that for us, so should we quickly skip back a couple of days and have a look and say what Jelle had to say about it? And you know, I nearly forgot, Malsrfun. It's a great username. Love to know what your real name is, but you asked the question about cuttings. I think we've gone over cuttings, loads of stuff. But the reason why it's appropriate that you're here is his main question is, how thick can you do a cutting on, say, a Chinese elm?
A Chinese elm like this.
Well,
this is actually tricky, right? This is actually getting to the size that you really have to think, well, if I want to take a cutting, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. Do you know why? I'm gonna butt in. Guess what? That was a cutting that was that thick. So that's like, how big is it?
Yeah, but that's the thing, cutting. You know, mate, I've got a video out. Well, it's actually coming out later this year, so you might have to wait for it to come out. But I'm doing the wrist size cutting of a Chinese elm. I trunk chopped a large tree in my growing field last year, and I decided to not throw everything in the compost and just for the fun of it to take a piece this size, this wide, put it in a pot, 2/3 covered with soil, little plastic baggie over it, and just put it in a corner. And right now there's about this much growth on it, so I'm pretty convinced that will root. So I think Chinese elms can be rooted in pretty much every single thickness.
I agree.
Was that the question?
Yeah, that was it. He's very, I think he's very enthusiastic about the amount of cuttings and stuff that goes on. He clearly likes to do it. And I think you just want to know whether or not you can cut your neighbour's tree down, which is a Chinese elm, has a trunk this big, dunk it in some water, some cutting gel, and get roots from it.
There is, of course, always the safer option, which could be air layering. So if you really want to go for very thick trunks and you're not experienced in cuttings, by all means, have fun and try it. But if you really think it's important that this tree survives, because you only have one shot, consider air layering, because that is a very safe technique to get roots on elms.
So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks so much for your support. And don't forget to watch that video when it comes out on Jelle's channel.
And just keep growing bonsai, right?
Exactly. What a good name. Do you know, you should call it Growing Bonsai. That would be a great name for a YouTube channel.
Growing bonsai by me.
I'm not sure about that.
All right.
But anyway.
See you later.
So hopefully that's answered your question about cuttings. Do you know what? My thing about cuttings is poke them in the dirt. If they work, they work. If they don't, try again next year. Now, I brought this Ginkgo out here for a very specific reason. And really, that's for the benefit of Graham. I still feel a little bit, well, I don't know. I feel like when I look back over the review of the one we did for Graham's Ginkgo, this lovely air layer, it's fantastic you got that air layer, and it felt really hypercritical. And I haven't seen the comments yet because it's coming out today, so I'll get ready for that. But Graham, this is for you, and really to indicate that this is what I think you should be looking to doing. You've done the work, you've done the hard work, you've got this great big straight section, which is what I've got here, and then I've got two branches. Now, it's not exactly the same. It wasn't an air layer. This came from already rooted material, and I'm using it to show how I see yours actually coming out. They do backbud, and this is the second solution to perhaps a tree that you're not sure about, or you certainly don't want to air layer it, you don't want to wire it, and often the option is to just go with the best you've got. And in this instance, got this big straight section here of trunk, absolutely nothing I can do about it. But I've got 2 branches. Again, no taper here, no real taper in the branches, but the Ginkgo is now spreading out these. I've got the basic structure. That's all I need. And I think, Graham, that's what we were trying to say with you. And for many people, if you're going to go, often you go for that upright. This is the answer to a lot of those difficult straight trunk questions. And in fact, I've got another one. It's a Japanese maple. I'll show you in a second. All I'm going to do, feed it and let it grow. Let it grow, let it grow. Clip back. And this will be a clip and grow. And eventually what I'm hoping to do is to get a nice canopy. It'll be a bit round, perhaps a little bit false for a Ginkgo, but actually there'll be so much green around here that I think it's going to complement this. And I think what I was saying to you about Ginkgo is don't be surprised if you start getting buds popping, especially if they're healthy, which can actually change the whole way you look at it. And in fact, I've just noticed, just here, there's a new bud. You can just see the brown head on it that's just starting to pop. Now, for this instance, that's probably not going to be a very good branch in the design. But I say again, healthy. If you let lots of growth on there, leave the growth, don't prune it back, you will get all over here little buds that will pop in different spots. So really, the second method of trying to develop or fix a tree that has problems is to actually make sure it's healthy. At least pick some good primary branches that fit in with either upright, informal, or however you like to see it, and then let it grow and see if you can get a nice canopy or something to create what will be a really nice, I think for this one, a nice upright Ginkgo. There's a bit of movement there, and I think it looks okay. So Graham, definitely, I think with what you've got, there is definitely some good times ahead for you. And in fact, should we look at just another maple where, again, second principle, just let the tree grow so long you've got your basic structure applies. And look really, really healthy, but as Jelle pointed out, it does have what you'd call a glaring flaw, which could have probably been avoided if I thought about the location of the Airlayer in the first place. I may not even have taken it here because this one actually has very, very taperless trunk up to the point of the first junction, and then going further up, it's the same. There's no real taper there. It's very straight and fat, whereas at least here, you've got a bit more elegance and everything. And, you know, your consideration could be to cut, remove that whole thing, change the planting angle, all sorts of things like that. But you know what? For some reason, I quite like it. Yes, that is never going to be a technically correct tree for a bonsai. But you know what? For my garden, cost me nothing. I love the foliage on this. Beautiful. All I'm going to do is, well, it's probably method 2A, hide and distract. And Jason Hanrahan of the Bonsai Garden done a very, very good video about a hawthorn that he's been air layering. It's got 2 stumps out of it. And Jason, this is not a criticism, but sometimes you've got ugly stumps that are really impossible to heal. You haven't got growing beds. You haven't got the space, the time to grow and heal things. So what you do is hide them. And you'll often find it with clumps and stuff like that, where you create a false crown that actually gives this imitation or impression of age and development. And you know what? If you look down, and I think we've got a picture of Jelle at Greenwoods when he was looking at one of their Trident stumps, looking down and having a look and seeing what the healing's like going there. When the leaves all fall off, they often look very, very different. And what I'm going to do with this, continue to grow out, perhaps lower a pad here, bring a pad down around and across here, and create a sort of multi-level tree based on what I've already taken. As I said, it's not going to win any bonsai competitions, but you know what? Once that's put in a nice pot, once it's been developed over the next couple of years, I think it's going to look pretty decent, and I'll certainly be happy to have it in my garden. And actually, I'll bring a third one to help hammer home how many different things you can have, where ultimately it's about leaving it and letting the tree decide the future. And this third one is this Trident Maple here. It was part of a batch I bought in 2017. I think I paid a grand total of £15 for it. Absolutely horrendous split root, which a lot of these cheap imports have. I think back then I didn't know what to do with it, and I just threw it on top of a rock. Didn't even tie it down, I just threw it on top of a rock and then buried it and left it. Going up, it's got horrible, horrible trunk scars where branches have been removed. It's got all this knobbly stuff here. Do you know what? To actually do some work on that, it's going to take a lot. And really the only solution to try and resolve something like that is actually to put it in a growing bed and leave it for years and try and maybe get rid of this big branch here, which has got wire scars and is a bit odd. It's got a very, very odd angle here. Get rid of that and just grow these two up. Feet and feet and feet. And you know what? That would be a really viable option and probably in the long term the best option. But you know what? What I'm probably going to do, somewhere in there maybe, is accept, well, we've got that. Grow this pad out, grow these pads, maybe shorten that, get some growth here, have a bit of an unusual looking tree, but pretty well reliant on the tree picking the direction it's going to go. The faults are there, the swelling's there, the bad cuts that happened before I got it are there. And quite frankly, I'm not willing to invest time and space in putting it into a grow bed and doing the long-term development. So I'm going to let the tree do the work. It's going to sit in a corner, it's going to get fed well, and you know what? May not win any prizes, but in the garden with a decent pot in a couple of years, I think I can probably make a pretty credible tree out of this. And I may even actually remove that top section because we've got a nice branch here and have it that sort of height with a sort of, again, just a straight upright, and start trying to do some more wound healing on that slow time. Remember, with wound healing, if you've got to do it, the best place to do it is in a growing bed. If you haven't got a growing bed, it's going to take you longer. But you know what? Bonsai is a long game most of the time. So if you don't want to do anything radical like Airlayer, big cuts, which we're going to come to in a minute, then just pick the best front, some good branches, and just develop it and keep the tree healthy. I'm happy with this one. Not pretty, but then neither am I. Now, before we get to the third tree and the third approach, I'll just bring you straight back. Sometimes we do make some appalling decisions, and I say we, I mean me. I'm going to show you two trees where all got horribly wrong, and you've got to ask yourself, is any approach really worthwhile? This one again, you know, lovely leaves on it. It was a big Airlayer. Look at the size of this. It was this tall that was taken off the neighbour's tree. Worked really, really well. And you look at it, and maybe a few of you might say, Zav, maybe you can create a tree here. But this shares the same problem that Jelle was talking about in his questions. We've got this little big straight section here, no taper, then it continues up. We've got some horrendous, ugly wounds here, and bulges here, bulges here. But the only thing that's potentially good is on this side. The first thing you'd say is, Zab, why on earth did you take the Airlayer where you did? Again, you know, I did a video about that. I shouldn't have. This was a terrible, terrible idea. There is a solution, and I'm not going to show it to you, but it involves an Airlayer. See, even there it's got this massive scar just here, but perhaps an Airlayer just here, and see if I can create a pretty tree from that. There's no point doing it here because that's a great big long section, but maybe, no, probably an Airlayer just there. So that's what I'm going to do. Otherwise, it's a case of planting it in the garden or saying, let's not waste my time, effort and energy on it and pass on to someone else who might want it and enjoy the challenge, or indeed get rid of it. There's another one as well that's got a pretty terminal problem, and unfortunately that's a larch that I've had since the very, very beginning. And sometimes trees just die. This one died because I split it up from the rest of the group to make that big 12, 13 tree planting you saw earlier in the year. And you know what? Some of the bonsai problems we have are just insurmountable. This larch, grown from a sapling in 2000, I thought it was going to be brilliant. In the end, I did kill it. I pulled it out and didn't give it enough roots, and I have a final solution. And this third tree, again, another Airlayer from the maple. I must be honest, I'm going to do work or something that's about saving a tree. Generally, I'll pick, it'll either be a maple, it'll be a trident, or it'll be a real nice corkbark elm. It'll be a tree that is already sought after or attractive, because otherwise I find it's just not worth the effort and the risk. We've got the same issue here. In fact, Mahendra, you did a whole load of work on a Japanese maple, and you asked your question about 2 branches that were still there. Do you know what? My solution is going to be pretty similar. I've got, that's me cutters. That might give you a hint what's going to happen soon. You know, I've got this tree here that's got a split trunk, very, very low down, and I've got to really decide, do I want this big, thick, tapeless trunk that goes all the way up here, up the side here, or do I want to concentrate the tree on this second trunk, which is thinner, still lacking taper, but perhaps by removing branches at key points, seeing if I can trigger the tree to do something for me. If I'd spent a fortune already to buy this, I might be less inclined to do this, but this was an Airlayer. Probably took the Airlayer in the wrong place. Vigorous, healthy, good soil. I reckon I can get away with this. So my third solution is to be radical in your pruning. We're still in sort of mid-May, so it's still in spring. If I do this right, it's got right through the rest of spring, summer, autumn to recover and then produce the shoots that may well turn this into a much better, promising bonsai in 2027. First thing, Japanese maple. You know, with the lines, they indicate the points where the internodes were. So there was one there, probably one there and there. So realistically, that's the point. If I keep this as any sort of stub that I'll get buds from, I'm going to go up one and cut it there. And as you can see, that's giving a really good cut. These Prinabo electric cutters are really good. So all I need to do then is clean that up. We may well get dye back all the way back to that first, or to that line there. It may go further back. Either way, that should promote new shoots down here somewhere. But I don't yet know whether I'll keep that. Main tree is up here. I've just put some cut putty on it. I've used Adam of Notion Bonsai. His green cut putty supposedly fits in well for these Japanese maples. Looks pretty good to me. Main reason for that, stop infections come in, to just slow down or reduce the risk of dieback too far down. Probably find we're going to lose a centimetre. So then looking further up here, this is going to be pretty brutal, because I want the tree to regrow branches and reduce the amount of limited taper. Don't know how this is going to work, this one here, but I'm certainly going to keep it growing. We'll see what comes out from down here, which means I just need to look higher up and just recognize that I really definitely don't want anything here. So we'll get rid of that. Don't want that one there. We'll get rid of that. I'm never going to be able to change the lack of taper here unless the other radical thing is I could actually literally cut both off. If I was going to do that, and even probably with this one, it would probably have to go into a growing bed. That would be something I would do in 2027. That's not off the table as a potential option, and get some really nice new shoots growing up. Nursery beds are fantastic. So again, we look further up. We've got this branch here, which I cut back to. So we've really just got to look and see an appropriate point. Cut this one back to, and I don't want all that straight up there. We've got this straight section. We don't want a section that's as long as that, so it's got to be shorter. I would probably initially take it off there. And before anyone asks, yeah, definitely there's an absolute ton load of cuttings there. So that's what we've got. I could see myself again cutting even, do you know what? Let's cut further back. I'm keeping that growth on there because I want to still try and feed stuff there, but I actually think the answer here is probably to have shoots coming out here and then grow branches from there. So that's the application of the third solution, which is picking appropriate places to actually cut hard back to, so that you can try and at least reduce what are the obvious defects, which for this tree was a complete lack of taper a long way up the trunk. And yeah, this of all the solutions is going to take the longest, because whatever we get from these sites is going to have to swell and expand sufficiently that it's at least the credible size to that, because that's high up the tree. Anything below that has really got to be thicker. All about proportion, all about getting it right. This will be a long-term project, but having done these cuts, I think Mahendra, you could probably see and appreciate the same. This has a future, it definitely has a future, just going to take longer. So there you go, 3 different problematic trees, 3 different reasons, and 3 very different approaches, all of which I'm sure that you can do if you wish to. And ultimately in the end, your trees, your garden, your hobby. If you're happy, what does anyone else's opinion really matter? I've now got to get on and try and do something with this problematic hornbeam, and we can all see it, the problem it has. Long, straight, taperless trunk. Reason why I've still got it? Actually, I took an Airlayer off the top. The Airlayer looks brilliant. But you know what? I'm up for a challenge. Let's see what I can do with this. This is subject to probably a 3-year time lapse. If you want to see how this gets on, and a lot of the others you've just seen, then you need to make sure you're subscribed. For whatever reason, YouTube is definitely pulling subscribers away, and they're not directing bonsai content, to bonsai people. I don't know why, but that's how you can help this channel, and I'd certainly appreciate that. Anyway, again, thanks again for your patience. Thanks again for sending all those questions in for the previous 2 editions where Jelle and I answered your questions, and I really sincerely mean this. There was never, ever meant any intention to make anyone feel stupid, silly, or point out big problems. I've shown you my trees to show you that I do exactly the same thing, and we all do. We all have those sort of trees. So if you want to see a good video, have a look at that one. I think it's pretty decent. Apart from that, happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.